Hi class, in this series of video tutorials we're going to work through the model rocket project. The first step of the tutorials will take us through modelling the body of it, which is this main part here using the Revolve tool, and a sketch which is really just a 2D drawing of half of the shape that we will spin around the Revolve tool to make that. The next part will be making a single one of the fins, so we can then use the circular pattern tool to duplicate it and make several. Following that, we'll make the little nozzle here for the booster using an extrusion with a taper on it. And beyond that, there'll be a few other things like adding an extrusion which creates this little hatchway door on the side of the object. And then we may also carry out a shell which hollows out the inside of it, add chamfers and fillets to create these kind of curved and smooth edges around the edges of the fins. And there are a few other bits and pieces that we can add, like portholes, or we could add some extra windows or a kind of an aerial on the top of it. These will all be kind of extensions. So the main thing is really to model the body of the rocket. Having modeled the body of the rocket, the next part will be creating a drawing from that model. And the drawing will be created using Inventor and using the model that you've already made, so that you don't actually have to create the technical drawing yourself. You can extract these views from your model, and then we can use the tools in Inventor to add some dimensions. Finally, we'll create a rendered view, which is really just almost like a photorealistic picture that's produced from your model. It's the sort of thing that you would use for maybe marketing a new product that you're developing or designing. So without any further conversation, we'll just get started on actually how to model this. And so to begin with, what we need to do, if you've just opened Inventor, is when you're going to new files, make sure that you've selected metric and that you've gone standard millimeters IPT, this file here. Now don't worry if you get a pop-up like that, you just click OK. It shouldn't happen on your screens, it just happens on mine. Next step is that whenever we start modeling anything, we need to create a two-dimensional sketch that we can use these modeling tools to produce a three-dimensional solid from. So we're going to click the Start 2D Sketch button up at the top here. We don't want to click the bottom part, we want to just click the top. And this brings up three work planes that we can choose to sketch on. So these are the surfaces, these kind of virtual imaginary surfaces in this big three-dimensional space that I can work in, upon which I can create a sketch. And then we can relate these to the view cube. So these ones here are kind of like the views from the front and the right. And then this one would be sketching it from the top down. And because we're going to be drawing it, or at least part of it, from the side, we want to choose one of these planes, the XY plane or the YZ plane. I'm just going to choose the XY. The next thing I need to do is create a center line so that when I make my rocket, the sketch that we're going to create here for half of it, we need a center line that goes right up the middle of the rocket that's like an axis of symmetry. So to do that, what we need to do is use the line tool, and it's important that we start it on this center point here. So you'll see that the cursor should pop into like a little green blob when it's over the center, and we click once to start that line. And you have two options. One is that you can just draw a line of any size, and when you finish drawing the line, you can press the escape key. The top left of your keyboard should say ESC to cancel using that tool, or you can right click and just press cancel. So we have a line here, and we need this line to be 200 millimeters long. So we can use the dimension tool, which is shortcut D on your keyboard. When we've selected that tool, we can click the line once, move the cursor to the side, click again, and that will allow you to modify the size of this line. We want to make it 200, so we type in 200, then hit enter. Now, because the line has gotten much longer, it's kind of shot off the top of the page, and to make it come back into view, I can go over to the side here and click Zoom All. And that will bring this line back into view. Now, just to go back a step to show you another way of doing that, I'll just delete it. We could alternatively start our line, and instead of creating it and then dimensioning afterwards, we can actually dimension the line as we create it. What's important though is that we use our cursor to make the line point in the right direction to begin with. So I need to make sure the line is pointing straight up and down the way, not off at an angle to the side. And without clicking, I just type in, because you see that it's highlighted in blue, the size. We can type in 200 to tell it how tall it's got to be and hit enter. Either way will get us the same result. We'll have a 200 millimeter long line. Now the next step to create this sketch is that we need to add a little line at the bottom. I'll just flip this the other way around so it looks the same as ours. So we need to add a little line at the bottom that we can draw an arc from the end of to the top of that tall line. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the line tool again, and this time just using our judgment, we're going to draw a line that comes out of there a short way, around about to maybe 25, 30 millimeters or thereabouts. I'm not going to be too precious about that because we want to be able to change this later if we want to modify the size and shape of our rocket. So I'm just going to make a line that's about 25 millimeters long, but not exactly. Again, we can right click, cancel, or we can just hit the escape key to stop using the tool. We now have a little line, tall line, and the last thing we need to do is use the arc tool to draw a curved line between them, which will give us this part of the rocket's shape. So we're going to use the arc tool. To use the arc tool, we click once at each point where we want the arc to start and end. So we must make sure we see those green blobs so that we know it's joining up with the ends of these lines. If we don't join it with the ends of the lines and we leave a gap, it just won't work. So we click once at the start of this or the end of this line, and then we click again at the end of this line. And then you'll see that before it creates the arc, you get to choose how curvy it is. Now, you don't want to make it too big because it'll end up just looking like a balloon. And equally, you might not want to go in too far because it'll just look like a dart. So something around about there is probably sensible, but you've got a bit of, a decision to make yourself. You might want quite a chunky rocket, a really slim aerodynamic one. It's really up to you. So choose your arc, then click to create it. Having done this, we've basically created the profile in a 2D sketch that we need to revolve and make a three-dimensional shape. I can click Finish Sketch. You'll see the view changes slightly, but I can again hit Zoom All to see that all together. And the tool I need to use now is the Revolve tool. So if I click Revolve, if you haven't left any gaps, it should automatically select the shape. If it hasn't, you just click within the shape to select that profile so it goes blue inside. But as I say, if it will not select, it means there's a gap. You might need to go back to the sketch and fix that. The only thing we need to do now is tell it which axis we want it to spin around to create the three-dimensional shape of the body of the rocket. If I was to click on this line and choose the axis, we can see it doesn't give us the result we want. It gives us something that looks a bit more like a dish. So what we're going to do is make sure that when we use the Revolve tool, that we select the big long 200 millimeter line as the axis. So axis should be highlighted here, and then we click on axis. You'll see that then spins round the line and gives us our kind of rocket body shape. We can click OK if we're happy with that, and we've basically created the main part of the model. Now, it may be that we actually look at this and decide we're not terribly happy with the shape. So if we want to change the sketch that we used originally, we can go over to where we've made this revolution, click at the arrow beside, and open up the sketch. And that would allow us, if we wanted to modify this by, for example, bringing this line in a little bit further at the bottom, or making the curve a little bit bigger. And then we can hit Finish Sketch, and we'll see that that will update the model. So I'm quite happy with the shape of this. I'm going to stop the tutorial at this point, and then the next tutorial will take you on to how we model the fins.